Welcome to the Strangers on the Way podcast. I'm so honored to have today's guest, who I heard about over 15 years ago, which is wild, during college. My friend Eric always talked about this man who was a poet that inspired him and was just a wonderful human. And we ended up on an author panel together a couple months ago for our college, and I got to meet the Nick Demske. So, Nick, welcome to the podcast. Would you like to start and just share a little bit about who you are with our listeners?
Sure. First of all, thanks so much for having me, Lauren. I'm definitely excited to do this. And I think this is the first podcast I've ever been a part of. So big
Wow,
deal.
I'm
Yeah.
honored. That's
Well,
amazing.
me too. Yeah, as we were talking earlier, I kind of have a little bit of an eclectic background. But I am a poet, decently published American poet. I am a librarian, and I work as the director of the Racine Public Library. I've been at the Racine Public Library for over 18 years. So I started when I was 3 years old. And I also have a community organizing background. So I've just been involved in a lot of activist and protest work, specifically around anti-racism and racial justice work. And that led me eventually to being involved in electoral politics. I spent 6 years from 2018 to 2024 uh, in the role of county supervisor of Racine County's first district. Really got to do a lot of different kinds of work, but especially focused on public safety transformation work, uh, public safety transformation policy. And I think the last thing, well, yeah, there's a lot under that like justice work umbrella that we could talk about. But the last thing that I'll mention is I'm involved in a number of spiritual communities also. All of this work is very spiritual to me. I just got to sit in someone's home with a Buddhist community, just four of us in the home yesterday, and some other folks virtually. But I also I give sermons usually just, 1 to a few times a year at the local Universalist Unitarian Church here, which is called Olympia Brown UU Church, named after the first fully ordained woman minister in the United States of America, who was a minister at this Racine Church for a small amount of
Wow,
time.
it started in Racine. She started in Racine.
Well, yeah, I don't know if Racine was the first church she ministered at, but
Okay.
she was, a minister at that church for a little amount of time.
Wow. Oh, amazing. I love it. There's so many ways we can go. I would love to start with your poetry. Did you love words as a child, or how did this develop?
Yeah, I think I did. That's such a cool question. I don't know that I fully remember, but I do know that as a kid, I was never like, I want to be a poet when I grow up.
Sure.
But of the things that I was interested in being, a comedian was one of them. And I
Okay.
think that big influence, and you hear a lot of comedians say this, but was my father and maybe some other family members. My dad has always just been like, he's definitely insane. Everyone who knows him will verify that for me. But he has this sort of beautiful, like, neurodivergent impulse, but genius also, to, like, whenever any conversation is going on, just like glomming onto the words and like doing weird things with them until there's some sort of joke out of it. So a love of word play was instilled in me early on, and now I get to see like my nephew, his grandson, and my niece, his granddaughter. They're like really enjoying being a part of that lineage too, which is really beautiful. So I think, yeah, love of words was instilled in me pretty early, but that didn't manifest to like, oh, I think I want to write poetry until maybe like high school, something around there.
That's amazing. Do you remember writing some of your first poems?
I think, um, I think I probably started out, I always say that music is my first love. Though I've never really managed to like do much with that first lap. Um, but I think probably the first stuff I was writing was like song lyrics. And yeah, I'm sure they'd be very adorable and embarrassing if I were to revisit them now. But I do have tons and tons of just like old handwritten journals from, just an archive of myself in these pages that I'll still go back to and revisit from time to time.
Oh, I love that so much. As you were songwriting or writing, do the words, I'm always curious about people's processes. So do you feel like it comes to you, through you? Like, do you take walks and get inspired? Like, how does it come to be?
Yeah, now you're really like talking my language. I'm so interested in this. We just lost a great American poet named Alice Nunn. I guess I shouldn't even say lost, right? She joined the ancestors. In the Buddhist tradition, we would say, we get to be her continuation body now. And another amazing contemporary poet, C.A. Conrad, wrote a poem after her transition where they said, um, she stopped speaking to spirits so that she could become one. Uh, so yeah, there is this great, very ancient belief and tradition in poetry. Poetry is ancient, right? Poetry precedes the written word as an elder. It existed in the oral tradition far longer than writing has existed. So yeah, this idea that like the muse or muses or some sort of different otherworldly presence is communicating through you has always been part of that. And I think when I first came to poetry, like I wouldn't call myself like a super like spiritual person. And my mom died in 2007. And we always joked that I just like became her and she just like possessed me after that. And that's definitely one of the sort of inheritances I got from her. So, anyways, yeah, I definitely at this point feel like, uh, I don't know, you can try to like force yourself to write something amazing, and that just doesn't seem to be real. It's not a technical formula that you can like replicate. Something else has to manifest, and it's hard to understand always how to be in relationship with that, manifest that. But there are ways to conjure that spirit.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would say I'm definitely in collaboration with a lot of external ambiguous forces when
Hmm.
I'm tapped into a creative flow.
I love that. What is, yeah, could you drill down even more? Like, is it different each time, or is there like even you talked about being like doing meditation for a long time. Like, can you get yourself to that place, or is it somewhat um oh, you like catch the flow at certain times? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so first of all, maybe just to give some context, like, I had the only full-length book that I've had published was published in 2010. And for kind of a few years there, I was like a pretty hot emerging, poet in the country. And what I found is if you don't like stay on that, it cools off really quickly. So I'm just, especially once I entered into the realm of electoral politics, like before I even got elected, as soon as I started my first campaign, so much of that energy had to be focused in this different space that poetry and really a lot of my creative life took a big back burner. And it wasn't until like September is just an interesting mile marker. My wife and I had our 10-year anniversary, and we went
Yay.
to this Airbnb for a week, which turned out, we didn't know this when we booked it, but it turned out to be a Buddhist retreat center. There was just like Siddhartha statues everywhere and walking paths. And so over that week of vacation, when I wasn't working a ton, which is some of what I do now, I was able to reconnect with the practice of reading. I was able to reconnect with the practice of poetry. I was able to reconnect with a number of different creative practices. Uh, so I guess, answer your question, I think that there, like if I would have tried to tap into that when I was giving so much energy to that other space, that the community basically, I think that I would have just found like, no, that's not in here because it's somewhere else. You're giving it somewhere else. My therapist says uh, uh, attention and energy are finite, and I think that's a good thing to remember. However, if I am able to pay attention to myself differently and like uh, I guess just it really feels like a relationship, being relationship and being a dialectic with that energy. Lately I've been able to tap into it very quickly. A lot of writers, and this has been true for me in the past, they're like, I need to have like a big chunk of writing time to be able to tap into, like, prime myself to tap into that space. I still just don't have that because my job as a director of a pretty decent sized public library is pretty demanding. So I've needed to figure out how can I tap into that in 10 to 20 minutes. And fortunately, I've been able to. The last thing I'll say is just like with meditation, the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh says, if you want to transform potatoes to be edible, right? Like you can't just boil them for like 5 minutes. You've got to boil them for like 45 or an hour. And he's saying that about mindful sitting. It's like, yeah, you can sit for 5 minutes, but if you want to transform something, be working towards 20, 30, 45 minutes. The time matters in that. And so the last thing I'll say about creative process and writing is like, it does hit different. A 5 minute meditation is great, and a 5 minute active poetry is great for me, but it does hit different if it's a 10, 20 minute thing or if it's a 3 hour thing. And different fruit is produced based off of that.
So good. I really love how you said like the attention and energy are finite. Did you, as you transitioned into this sphere of community organizing and policy, did you miss writing, um, or did you feel guilt? And I feel like because creatives like do need time,
Yeah.
um, and some seasons like or if you have like women have children or like well families have children
Yeah.
or whatever life might be in different seasons, like did you feel guilt, and if you did, how did you like step into releasing that guilt, or was it easy because you knew like nope, I'm like doing this in this season, I know I'm meant to do this in this season.
That feels like a really good question to me. Because I think so many of us feel guilt about not living the life we imagined we'd live, or that, there's a really deep core part of us that wants to live. And that's maybe especially true for like deeply creative people. Uh, so yeah, there's a part of me that always feels that pull, that always feels that like, oh, really, I, I think I wrote a poem in the new manuscript I'm writing, which is called "Notice of Adverse Determination," which was that's the title of a document that an insurance company will send you when they're saying we're not going to support the medical claim that you're submitting, right? It's a
Wow.
notice of adverse determination. Um, but one of the lines and one of the poems in that is, I know you just think I'm horny for these spreadsheets and board reports, because that's what my life is. That's what it looks like from the outside. And I think I'm kind of talking to myself in that. Like, it's hard to recognize yourself when you just wanted to be like a comedian or a poet, and instead you're like doing all this data analysis and presenting to city council about a budget. um, so yes, all of that, it's not in there. And the piece that I think you're kind of speaking to is coming to peace with, like, that may change in my life. Certainly, well, one, I'll say going to therapy. I just like, I do a lot of therapy. I have for the last 4 years. I've gone to therapy, on and off for my whole life, but the last 4 years, really dedicated to it. I see my therapist one-on-one twice a month, and then I go every single week to a group therapy session. So like lots of money, lots of time, and it all feels totally worth it. Uh, but that work can lead you to, I think, what a lot of your podcast is about, which is like what makes you come alive and what makes you disappear, what makes you erase yourself a little bit. Or as if I guess if I say it more authentically to myself, what makes you want to die, or what makes you even want to kill yourself, right? Because I've definitely, part of my story is a story of like navigating mental health issues, and that's a big part of my whole family story too. So that practice with therapy led me to recognizing, like, all right, this electoral work is so important to me, and it's not leaving the space for this other stuff that I really, really, really. So that was a hard process of letting go. As Master Thich Nhat Hanh says, if you want to climb a ladder, you have to let go of one rung to grab onto the next. So again, I've really only come back to writing practice in earnest, I feel like, since September. And I'm not like, to get a book published, or even just to get like pieces published in like magazines or literary journals, you do a lot of submitting and things like that. I'm not doing any of that, right? There's so much that I'm still not doing that is part of what I consider to be being a writer, or being a poet. And I hope all of that, perhaps is in my future as I keep moving small pieces one at a time. But the last thing I'll say to your question is, like, in the meantime, I really had to and have to keep coming to peace with the fact that, like, the things that I'm doing now, I'm doing for reasons, right? Like, I love my job at the library, and I love library work and the missions of libraries, and it's incredibly difficult. It's never been harder in my lifetime, anyways, to work in a public library. We've never seen assaults on literacy and libraries to the degree that we're seeing now. But there's reasons why I'm there, partially just because they pay me and they provide me with health insurance, but there's other reasons too. And so I just know this is where I want to be right now. And that may change. This is my buddy Bobo. Can't see
Hi,
a
Bobo.
little backlit, but
For those listening, it's a sweet little dog that's new to the family, I believe.
that's right. We've only had him for a month, but he's a total
Oh,
champ.
so cute. I love that. That's so good. Could you share more about working at the library and then community organizing and being a part of government and how all that came to be?
Sure. Those few, yeah, those are three big buckets. So
Uh-huh.
we'll see which piece I touch on. Um, Working at the library, the way I wound up at a library. So you and I went to the same college, maybe not at the same time. Is that correct?
I think I was a little bit younger.
Okay. Uh, so yeah, we both graduated from Carthage College in sunny Kenosha, Wisconsin. I live in Racine, Wisconsin, which is like 15 minutes away. I love the Racine community. It's been so good to me, and so I want to give to it so much because it's just given so much to me, and it continues to. I love Racine so much. Um, what probably the most important part of the like foundation of that is when I graduated from Carthage with this creative writing degree, right? You don't go to like the creative writing factory to work. So at the time, I was just like, I have no idea what to do. I talked to this librarian who also was the rock climbing instructor there. That's really what made me come alive at Carthage.
Wow.
This is Chris Grugel. I don't know if
Oh,
you
yes. I love
yeah,
that man. Yes.
incredible human being, a rock climbing librarian like myself. But I not having libraries on my radar at all, but having rock, I knew rock climbing really made me come alive, and I didn't want to be a professor. I knew that much. I didn't want to teach. So I went to Chris and just said, like, well, what would you do if you were leaving right now? And he said, I would go to this thing called the National Outdoor Leadership School, and I would live outdoors in the Rocky Mountain wilderness for 3 months. So that's what I did. And I had to give up a lot to do that. I'd love,
Wow.
that's a whole different experience I'd talk to you about some other time.
Wow.
But when I came back, I like had sold my car and given up my apartment and basically cleaned out my bank account and just didn't really, I wasn't coming back to a lot other than these great life experiences that I took with me. Uh, and so I was living in my girlfriend's mom's basement, who now is my wife and my mother-in-law. Uh, and I was it was like, okay, like now I should probably get something to give me some amount of money. I should get some income somewhere. So this is at the time of paper applications. This is 2007. My mom's dying of cancer. I'm living in this basement and I'm taking the city bus. Heyo public transit, love some public transit. Taking the bus downtown every day and just walking around in the cold, collecting these paper applications, going to the only free, warm place in the community to fill them out, which is the public library. I'm doing this day after day, and eventually, um, someone who is still a colleague of mine to this day, someone who I'm so utterly grateful to, who just really connects with people and sees people uh, in a way that's so impressive, but saw me day after day and just, noticed, hey, this person's kind back to me. And she said, are you looking for a job? And I said, yeah. And she just pulled out a paper application and said, well, we've got an opening right now. So, if you want to, you can apply here. And so on the day of my mother's funeral, I got a call from the library that I was being hired to be a bookshelfer for like $9.64 an hour. And that was a little over 18 years ago. And I've worked like 7 or 8 different roles in the library now, and I'm the director at this point. Maybe the only other things, I mean, we could talk about the library forever. Again, libraries, I always say libraries, the public library is the most radical institution in the United States of America. We give everything away for free. We literally just open our doors to the public, and everyone, no matter who they are, no matter what their background is, no matter what condition they live in, can walk right in. And you can't do anything you want in it, but you can walk in. And if you can play by our shared agreements, then you can stay as long as we're open every day. Um, so yeah, if I guess the last thing I'll say about library stuff is it acted as the foundation for the rest of my life, right? I got this thing to stabilize me in the community. Once I got there, I was like, oh my God, why didn't I ever think of this? This is everything I care about. I wanna be a part of this. And lastly, this particular library had like continuing education fund that basically paid for me to get almost entirely to get a master's degree in library science. So I know that libraries can change people's lives because they changed mine, right? They totally transformed mine. And now I'm able to transform so many other lives and the entire community and beyond through that generosity and that wisdom of the people who came before me stewarding that institution.
Oh, so beautiful. I'm having flashbacks to childhood, and every Friday, we would go with my cousins to our local library, and my aunt isn't able to see, so we would drive her and my cousins, and it was like our thing. And we were just starting to have computers, so there was like this little caterpillar game, and we'd print them
Yes.
out and like color and do the summer book challenges. And it really is such a, at least in my childhood, such a, like, oh my goodness, such a piece of who I am. And then you get to discover all of these other worlds with the books that you read. And yeah, so I just love that it's so meaningful, and like what a story that you have in such a tender part of your life. Um, and then look at you now, like leading the whole thing. It's amazing.
So you definitely feel motivated to try to give those opportunities and resources to other people when you're like, this is
Yeah,
the whole reason why I'm doing okay.
yeah, yeah. It's so powerful. Wow. And so is that how you got connected to community organizing, or was that a side piece that you became aware of, and how did that come to be?
That's a great question too, and I don't even know that I could. Well, I shouldn't say that. Um, so you and I were talking before we were recording, and I was saying that like even though I have all these kind of different backgrounds or like eclectic experiences, the some of the through lines for me is um, what I care about at the core is justice, healing, connection, and belonging. And libraries and poetry and writing and storytelling and policy and policy making um, and spiritual practice and certainly community organizing and justice work, they all share these uh, they're all incredibly important vehicles, and I would say incredibly effective vehicles, at least in some cases, to promoting those outcomes in communities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think, and I love that you're making me think about this because I don't very often, but probably some of the spaces where I started like getting introduced in light ways to community organizing was at Carthage College. They
Wow.
like I was always involved with the Black Student Union. They would like joke from time to time, like Nick's the token white guy in our Black Student Union. But then there was like a number of other white allies that started showing up as, not in my freshman year, right? But like as the years went on. And I was also one of the founders of a group that's still going on at that college called the Poetry Underground, which Eric Huff, who you mentioned, who is an amazing, awesome human being and poet, he was really involved in. And we in the Black Student Union would collaborate on open mics. And these were just like such important connecting celebratory community events that we shared and cross-cultural events in a very predominantly white institution. It was also like, to a lesser degree involved with Latinos Unidos. There was, I wouldn't say I was involved in anti-racism work yet. I don't think I fully understood what like the difference between anti-racism work was from I guess what I would call, maybe like what we would call now like DEI work, earlier version, kind of leading into anti-racism work and things like that. But there was a number of us, folks who were involved. We founded when I think this was in my junior year there, 2005. We founded the first college chapter of the NAACP at any private college, I think, in the state of Wisconsin. Like there was some good, at least low level, and sometimes like higher level community organizing stuff going on there. We were making connections through that, and this is the heart of everything. I feel like we were making connections and relationships that have served us for the rest of our lives, because some of those folks who did that stuff, they're out in the world now, in all different parts of the world, doing transformative, really high level justice work. Some in First Nations communities, because that's where they are and that's their background, their culture. That's where they belong doing that work. Some in the LGBTQ plus community. So just like all over the place. The last thing that I'll mention that we did at Carthage, and again, thank you for making me even think of like, where did these seeds sort of start from? But an awesome, this was really the baby of a great friend of mine named Derek Collins, great Black leader student at Carthage who now is doing transformative work at different educational institutions. But he went to a public college sort of convening that was like bringing together all the Black student unions and all the Latinos Unidos and all the like different affinity groups that did like culture and justice type work. And he was like, why don't we have this for private colleges? We should have this. So he made it, and a number of us were part of the founding of that. It was called the Wisconsin Private College Initiative for Diversity. But we were bringing in, speakers and just like workshops that still, to this day, like have really meaningful names in those spaces and those circles. So I got to be a small part of some really cool work really early on through Carthage College that really challenged me personally, that really challenged my own assumptions and understandings of the world, and that then grew into, kept getting watered after I left that institution, and grew into a lifetime and a lifestyle of this work.
Oh, I love that. A lifestyle. Um, I'm really curious, what led you to join Black Student Union, and like in the first place, had it always kind of been yeah, something you were drawn to, or was this new, or you had a friend, or like um yeah, I don't know too many classmates that were white in those organizations at that point. I know now there are quite a few, but
For sure. This is another one where I'm like, thank you so much for making me ask myself that question of like, go back, this is 20
Uh-huh.
plus years now. Like,
Uh-huh.
why did I do that?
Yeah.
And I again I'm going to reference Derek Collins,
Hmm.
and another great, great leader in the Kenosha community, and just great friend of mine, um, Niles Jackson, now Dr. Niles
Mm,
Jackson.
yes.
So we lived there's this tiny little all male dormitory at Carthage called Swenson Hall. And, by the luck of the draw, I just wound up in there. My wife, who is really justice oriented differently than me, like I'm much more kind of publicly involved, and uh, her work is different, but like really dedicated. She teaches me so much, and you know, is just a brilliant thinker around justice. But a lot of people are like, "Oh, Nick has a black wife, so his wife must have just like pulled him into Black Student Union." That wasn't the case at all. She wasn't really a part of Black Student Union. It was Derek, who was my resident assistant in that role, and Niles, who was our hall director, I think it was called, who were just like, I mean, immediately early on, they were just like, "You should come to this," and I'm like, "Okay." And that's kind of it. I mean, the soil, I came in with soft soil for this. Like,
Yeah.
I always cared about justice and fairness, but I didn't really know the mechanics, or certainly have any nuance around the history, or like how this work is actually brought into the world and nurtured in the world. So just really grateful to them and the others who not only, I always talk about the power of the personal ask. This may still be true. I'm not sure, but I maybe the person in this county who has like recruited more people into elected office in the last 6 or 7 years than anyone else. And it's not just people, but like people who are really underrepresented. So a lot of Black representatives, especially a lot of Black women representatives, a lot of we have a big Latinx population out here. So the forced Puerto Rican to be on city council, just like on and on. I really want to give credit to another amazing community organizer here, Fabi Maldonado, because most of that work that I did, we were doing it together.
Hmm.
He was such an amazing recruiter. So, anyways, I always talk about the power of the personal ask, and I'm so grateful to people like Derek and Niles who just said, "Hey, why don't you come to this?" And so grateful to the people who took me at good faith and gave me a soft landing and weren't just like,
Hmm.
"We don't want you in this space. You have nothing to offer." They very
Yeah.
much, uh, time after time, whether I was making significant missteps or not, welcomed me back in and recognized, no, this person can contribute meaningful stuff, and we want them here. They belong here. Right?
Wow. Oh, so proud of you. Did you kind of navigate the political landscape, and as you did, because I mean, you're clearly a pioneer, like it's very evident. Um, did you navigate that, not necessarily like first, obviously, like people have gone before, but um I love that you said like you open up spaces and just invited people in to become in these places of leadership, and I assume helped them, show them the way. Or was this kind of all simultaneously happening and you just saw like people carrying these gifts of leadership and um, said like, oh, you'll be really good at this? Like, does that make sense? I'm just
Yeah,
curious if like you're
totally.
like, no, you can do this, and like I did it, you can do it too. Or yeah.
Well, yeah, to your point, I mean, I really didn't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, at the time, had county representative that had done these really, really great things for the community. Uh, and like, frankly, tons of respect for this person, like elder statesman of our community. However, by the time I ran, he had been in the role for 20 years, and you just cool off. You like are not usually as assertively working for the community. I mean, it's just a lot of hard work. So no shade to anyone. So I just wanted a different level of representation. This person wasn't involved in the community that much anymore. And that just felt like that didn't need to be the case. So I talked to a lot of people first to try to get them to run. I just didn't want to do it. I didn't have any interest in it. Also, I didn't know this at the time, but at least when we redistricted during the last census, like this is the blackest in a very black city, relatively black county. This is the blackest county supervisory district in the entire county. And so this is a black representative. Generally, I just think like, it's, I don't think that, symbolic representation is meaningless. So if you have someone who represents a strong demographic in a district, but they're not doing anything, that's not anything I'm interested in like trying to promote. But I do think representation is incredibly important. And because the spaces where that representation exists in the voting populace are some of the only spaces where you really have a chance to create that representation. It's just really important to preserve those spaces in that way. So, this was a really respected Black leader in our community. I wasn't eager to knock him out of office, but a bunch of people around me were just like, yeah, we all want something different there. I don't want to be the one to do it. Also, nobody thought he was beatable. Like he's a 20-year incumbent. He hadn't had an opponent since that first 20 years, no opponent. So, anyways, what I found is even though I had such failure after failure after failure of trying to recruit people to run for that office, once you have done the thing that you're asking someone else to do, it hits very differently, right? And especially what people like, everyone, including this opponent, didn't think this was possible. They didn't think it was going to happen. And once you can demonstrate to people, hey, your imagination is too limited, and I got to be part of a posse. We actually called ourselves the Squad before the congressional squad existed. But, I wasn't running alone. So there was basically 6 of us in this community who all were doing kind of newly into electoral work and all supporting one another. That was critical. I would not have won that first election if I didn't have their support. But yeah, then once I'm in that role and once they're in that role, now we have sort of a slightly higher strata of people who believe that you shouldn't just be holding on to these roles permanently and like protecting your power, who believe that you should be inviting people up and like lifting while you climb. So we're just constantly, reaching out to people who never, ever, ever would have thought of themselves for this, but who we recognize these people are already community leaders. They just don't know it. And, so the last thing I'll say about all this is like what I've found, I've recruited so many people for elected office that I found the conversation is like pretty formulaic and very easy at this point. The same 5 to 10 questions get asked, or the same 5 to 10 things get said. And almost the biggest one every time is like, I don't know enough about this. or I'm not, what's the word? I'm not, um, I'm losing the word, but I'm not like fit for this role. I don't have the credentials for this role, or what it's not, I'm not finding the right word. Um, and what I would always say to them is the only reason why you think that's true is because you're not in these rooms seeing who's already in these roles. If you did, then you would be like, oh my gosh, I could do a much better job than this person, or not everyone, but like then some of this person we're inviting you to run against, right? Not only could I do a much better job, but I'm already actually doing a much better job advocating for the community than them, and I'm just not in a role of authority to make policy for that community. So yeah, I'm very nerdy about like leadership development and just nurturing people into uh, spaces that they maybe never imagined themselves to be, but would really be able to thrive and affect great change in.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. As you're talking, I work with a lot of young people, like college age students, and I think there is so much power in calling what you see in people because sometimes, especially, I think we're blind to sometimes what we carry or how we're already operating. Um, so I just love that you're calling people like up into these positions. If there's a young, not necessarily, maybe older person too, who is
Yeah.
really passionate, how, like, what advice would you give them, like where to start if they're like already involved in their community in some capacity, but they haven't even considered office in any capacity, but you're sparking their interest now as they listen to you. Where do they begin?
Yeah, I think again, it just wouldn't have stuck. I mean, we've in this community seen many people who would be good, like try on their own, and it just doesn't stick. Uh, so it wouldn't have stuck for me if I didn't have a community that just like, really organically and almost miraculously formed around me. And all of these people are still doing completely transformative work in this community and beyond. I'm so grateful to know them and to be part of that little family. Um, so what I would say to someone is like start trying to connect with people. What I guess I would say, like, don't just pull papers. Probably like that's kind of the first step in running for office, is pulling nomination papers and going around getting a bunch of signatures. You need a certain amount of signatures depending on the size of your district. You got to be above that threshold to get onto the ballot. That's maybe not the place to start. You can, um, and some people have success with that, but really just be getting involved in your community first. And if you are interested in like a policy role, like start getting involved, start to know the people who are there already, see who you vibe with and who matches your values, and see who doesn't. And then like really, try to help the people that do. And some of them will be your peers and some of them won't. But especially try to love up and collaborate with your peers, because those can be lifelong collaborative relationships that you'll be supporting each other through close or distant community. The last thing I'll say is, reach out to me. There are other people, that, no matter where you are, there are people who, if you share these values, we want to see you creating, we want to see you actively participating in the creation of the new. And we will give you our time and attention to the capacity that we can to make sure that you're able to do that. And I've had that conversation with tons of people throughout the country, probably no one outside of the country, who have taken me up on that offer and just gotten connected through like very random or, complex connection circuits.
I love that. Super generous. This is so good. Well, as we close, I would just love to hear what your like meditation and spiritual practice is, and if someone wanted to also tap into that, how do they start?
Yeah, again, like this is really where my heart is right now, I think. The justice work is really central to my heart, and creative work feels in inextricable from that. Like I feel like the two are in Buddhism. Sometimes we would say reliant on each other. Joy and suffering are reliant on each other. But creative work and justice work feel totally connected to me, inseparable. And at this point, I feel very much like spiritual practice is, for me, very inseparable from that also. I think for the kind of justice that I guess what I would just define as real, true justice, I also think that personally is inseparable from spiritual work and spiritual practice. Um, so, some of the basic ways that looks for me is I like meditate every morning. I pee and then I meditate. And now Bobo meditates with me, usually for like 25 minutes every day. And that's just sitting and focusing on my breathing and, trying to be in the present moment and actually trying to, when you stop doing other stuff, which most of us don't do, it's a strange irony of our lives, but you can do things like, um, being happy doesn't come naturally to me, like biochemically, right? There's stuff in my lineage and bloodstream that says, no, you're the opposite. When I stop doing other stuff, I can sit and actually just practice being joyful, practice feeling joyful, even if it's just the joy of my breathing not being labored. So that's one place that people can start. Again, since September, I've really been investing. I've really been just like pursuing and in love with the teachings of this Buddhist monk who passed away a few years ago, who's one of the most well-known teachers of Buddhism, at least in the West, maybe in the world, over the last century. But Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh. And he founded a community which has become many communities throughout the world, but Plum Village in France. So we talk about the Plum Village tradition. And I'll just say for folks who are interested in learning through that lens, through an actual Buddhist lens, um, they have an app, the Plum Village app, which has all these talks that Thich Nhat Hanh gave in his lifetime, all these talks that other monastics in that tradition give. And I mentioned to you earlier, like there's a podcast or two that they have that I love paying attention to. And maybe I'll just say quickly, like you know, what I've realized Thich Nhat Hanh published over 100 books in his life, which when you're like looking at someone who's just like stopping and slowing down, and then you see this massive amount of accomplishment in their lives, you're like, okay, maybe I don't know how this actually works. Maybe I should reconsider all of this. But in reading a few dozen books of his and listening to all these talks, I have started to notice, like, while replacing the media consumption that I have with this much more life-giving, uh, wisdom-fueled, wisdom culture consumption, is making me a totally different person, it feels like. And I just want to share it with everyone now. And the very last thing I'll say about that, one of the things that has really been hitting home for me. So I've been doing sitting meditation individually and like in little spurts in community with others, maybe like 3-day retreats here or there. For 15 years, probably. Thich Nhat Hanh says, he doesn't just say like, so a Sangha is like a community of practice. Um, he doesn't just say like, you need a Sangha, it's important to be in a Sangha. But he says, if you don't have a Sangha, your practice will die. And so I've just been hearing that really loudly lately, and something that is like newly shifting in me that I really feel a big new call around, that I know I'm going to be compelled to pursue more and more, is connecting with other people who do this kind of practice in my immediate community. And I have been finding them. And I think, so I've got this community organizing background and this library background, which both are obsessed with organizing. One's organizing humans, and the other is organizing information. But I'm organizing these humans, and then I'm like creating what in the library world we would call pathfinders, of just saying, here are all these different small communities that are practicing right here that aren't even aware of each other. And here are like opportunities for, workshops or retreats or things like that. So that's really where big passion of mine is now, and where I'm excited to see like where it leads, getting more connected with the greater Sangha.
Oh, I love that. That it sounds so like right. I, I, it's really interesting. I talk a lot about I've gotten to travel a lot, and um, at almost every other culture except for the United States that I've seen is communal, and we're quite
Mm.
individualistic. And yeah, I was even just in Mexico, and we were playing a game with some kids, and I thought we split into teams, and they ended up having the um, coming together to solve the thing instead of coming against each other. And I was like, and that was their natural, like, just, oh yeah, of course we, and it was jarring for me. I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm so um, into our culture that I'm like, oh, of course they're gonna compete and blah blah blah. And it's like, no, everything was shared. And it was really remarkable. So anyway, I think with everything, there's just so much to glean together and build off of one another. So I'm excited for your new discoveries.
I'll
Yeah.
keep you updated.
Yes, please do. Okay, final thing. For those that are not on YouTube, you can't see this, but Nick has this incredible wall behind him with a lot of words. Um, what is your favorite out of all of them?
Oh
If you had
God,
to
that's
pick,
so good.
or a
So
top one.
I wish you probably can't hear it on your side, but Bobo here, I'll show you in the camera. He's asleep on my leg, and he's
Oh,
he's actually snoring.
he's comfy.
Yeah, adorable.
Oh,
Um, I'm going to
take a scan.
turn. Yeah, God.
For
So
those that
what?
are not on YouTube, there's like, oh my goodness, I don't know how many quotes, but many, many.
Yeah, what this is. So my wife, whose name is
Yes, tell us.
Angela Malone, she runs interior design consulting service called Project Chic. It's spelled
Love it.
Projekt. Yeah, wow, that was hard to spell.
I love it.
Um, and she designed this office a while ago. And one of the ideas she had, she knows I'm a poet, and she connected with this tattoo and graffiti artist that we know. He's like one of my favorite artists in the world. He lives in the Racine community here. His name is D Hutch, incredible artist. Look up his stuff. But uh, she reached out to D and said, "Hey, will you just like, if Nick provides, 15 of his favorite poetry quotes, will you tag them onto a wall in our house?" And so we commissioned him to do that.
So good.
To ask for my favorite in here is like asking a mother to choose a favorite child. I'll just throw out. So one is from the amazing poetry elder Alpha Michael Weaver, which over here says, A fist is a hand that has made a decision. This one, oh God, they're all so amazing. Melvin B. Tolson, Like a Maniac on a Broken Phonograph. That's actually from the poem, my favorite poem, my favorite poem about the subject of justice that I've ever read. The title of it's blanking on me now. Well, the last one that I'll pull out here, because you can actually see it above me. But no, yeah, God, yeah. So come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. I think that's one of the more kind of well-known poetry lines that I have on here. I know some folks who have that tattooed on their arm, but that's from a poem by Lucille Clifton that's really amazing.
Wow.
They're actually, I'll just put a plug on Angela's, on the Project Chic website. There's like, she has a blog on there too, and there's like a very long blog post that goes through every single one of the quotes and like an explanation of what they come from.
Oh, I love it. We'll link to that in the show notes for sure. Well, Nick, thank you so much. This has been a joy. You have such deep character, and I just love your heart, and thank you for sharing a bit of who you are with the world.
I'm
great.
so honored to have been invited by you, and just thanks for doing this really cool podcast.
You're so welcome. Thank you for being on it.